And with that, what I would like to do is introduce our first speaker, so Dave West, who has just this really incredible basic cross-section of the age of software. What fascinated me first about Dave was he was the product manager for the Rational Unified process, which is still the best thing he's done. No. So everyone likes to throw the Rational Unified process under the bus, including sometimes Dave. But I actually think that was a major contribution to how we think of large-scale software. It didn't work out because it didn't give enough the kind of team-level flexibility. But in terms of having a connected value stream network, which is what we're after, it actually had it. It's just that the world's moved on. We've got more lightweight tools and processes and so on. But I think that was a tremendous contribution. Dave then ran products at TaskStop for a while and helped apply some of that vision to TaskStop. And now he's got this super fascinating perspective that he's going to share with you from running and being the CEO of Scrum.org. So you're actually going to see how these concepts work out at scale and see Dave's perspective all the way from the days of RUP to where we are today and how Agile's been scaling in the industry. So with that, let's switch slide decks and give a hand to Dave. So green.
It was very embarrassing. The guy that used to do RUP, and RUP used to be popular back in the day, and now it's used as a swear word, really. Some would argue that RUP actually motivated the Agile community to meet up in Snowbird and create the Agile Manifesto. So maybe that was its job, really, to be the sort of the villain in the current story. So 28 years ago, in Burlington, Massachusetts, Jeff Sutherland was a CTO of a medical device company, and he was having a nightmare. He was trying to deliver a product to market, and he just couldn't do it. So he met, interestingly, Ken Schwaber at Bible study, as you do, and they started talking about work, and it was like, oh, you know something about object-oriented software development? He goes, yeah. He goes, come in and help me. And they both sat down and realized how hard it was to deliver value, how hard it was to solve complex problems, how hard it was to deliver blooming software. So what they ended up doing was going off to two different places, Harvard and DuPont, and getting a set of ideas, which came back and formed the basis of Scrum. It was so successful that this company that Jeff was CTO of got sold to GE Medical, at that point now GE Healthcare, for an awful lot of money. From then on, Scrum sort of has become the most popular way of delivering software in the world. What's interesting, though, is it wasn't, unlike the Rational Unified process, a series of very smart, some good-looking, people sitting down and saying, oh, how do you build software? How do we work? It sort of evolved out of usage. And one of the most interesting things about the work that Mick's been doing is that we see a similar sort of parallel with Scrum. It's come out from people in this room having a hard time delivering value to clients. So I'm going to talk a little bit about complexity. I'm going to talk a little bit about the world that we live in. I'm going to talk a little bit about DevOps and Agile and Scrum, and really set the scene for all the very smart, awesome speakers that come after me. So every organization, this is the problem with RUP. Every organization wants a blooming silver bullet. They really want to take a prescribed and prescriptive approach that makes Google successful or makes Facebook successful or whatever, and then apply it in their organization without much thought. They want a grand unifying theory. They want a magic bullet. This is a grand unifying theory. I have no idea what for, though, but probably for donuts or something. But the point is, everybody wants that. Now, what's interesting, though, what Ken Schwaber and what Scrum.org is in the business of, is trying to help the profession not build the grand unifying theory, not build a process that can change the world, even though we sort of have, but more importantly, we believe that it's people that can deliver value. So, interesting point about Scrum.org, even though we are the home of Scrum, our mission isn't Scrum. And your mission shouldn't be Scrum either, or Agile, or DevOps, or even Flow Framework. It should ultimately be about delivering value. And we continue to grow. About 9 million people have come to our website. What we've seen in the last year is about a 50% growth. And what's interesting from our perspective is we're seeing now emerging markets start to surpass United States and traditional Western Europe. We're seeing places like Eastern Europe, India, no surprise there, Brazil, starting to build almost as much software, or certainly have as much interest in Scrum as United States of America, et cetera. Also seeing an inflection point in countries like the Netherlands and Germany and the UK and the US, where now it's not about introducing Scrum, it's about getting better at it. So we're seeing a sort of change across the industry. But we still see, and this is the interesting thing, that the majority of teams are using a Scrum kind of process. So before we start really getting into the Flow framework to Agile Scrum, let's set some context. So 2017 was a bit of an odd year. I don't know about you, but I was surprised numerous times. Now, I'm not going to talk politics, not particularly here. I don't know what could happen. It could get very scary here. So I'm not going to talk politics, but I don't know about you, but the Trumpster was a bit, I'm sorry, President Trump was a bit of a surprise to me, right? I went to bed thinking, oh yeah, something, you know, it's all going to be not business as not, and then President Trump was elected. It was kind of odd. The other thing, I'm English, right? So apparently, I hide it well, I think. I've sort of gone American, I've got perfect teeth now. And they're pretty good, actually. But apart from, how do you deal with getting stuff stuck all the time? I mean, I don't know how you do that, because they're now all sitting perfectly straight. When they're all like full of tartar and connected in some, you don't get anything stuck. Anyway, sorry, but I digress. But I'm British, right? So Brexit, I was like, no chance. I mean, what are they going to do? Blow it up and then move it? And they voted for Brexit. Now, some would argue this is all because of Russia, both these things, but I'm not going to go there. But ultimately, it was a surprise, right? A surprise. But not as much as a surprise as Leicester City winning the Premier League. Now, I'm from Leicester. I'm the only West boy that doesn't have a Leicester season ticket, which my dad still says I should buy one. I live in Boston. I think the commute might be awkward. But Leicester City are not a great team, or weren't. They were always, like, went down to the championship or the first division every other year. My dad put £10 on them to win or to finish in the top 3 of the Premier League every year, and he always lost his money. Their entire wage bill was less than one Man United player, and they won the Premier League. Now, that's incredible. I mean, wow, that's totally out of this world. And then you've got the Cubs or something. I don't know. This is, I don't know, some team. This is like, so baseball to me is like cricket, but less exciting. And played by less people. The World Series, isn't that just American? But anyway, they won the World Series. Now, business as normal has been put, the Boston Red Sox won it again this year, so at least we're back to normal now. But ultimately, I wouldn't have predicted these things. We live in strange times, and can we miss this? Stock price. Amazon said it was going to get into the healthcare business, into the Walgreens, CVS type business. Their stock dropped 20% overnight, like that. You know, the world, we live in full employment right now, almost. But did you see what happened to the markets yesterday? Or the day before, sorry? Incredible. GE, the greatest company, one of the greatest companies in the world, look at their stock price. And what's happened with Facebook? I mean, it's just crazy. And then we've got Elon Musk, the Willy Wonka of the future. Actually, I've been to Tesla. They do have umpers, these little chaps that run around. I don't know how they got them, but they did. It's an incredible world that we live in. Now, I like this gentleman called Thomas Friedman. He actually lives here, doesn't he? He lives in the DC metro area, and he's written a few books that I adore. One of them is called Thank You for Being Late. And he talks about 3 things that fundamentally are shaping the world today. He talks about digital globalization. The world is flat. The fact is that your car has probably been to more places than you've been. You know, when you look at the drive chain, that was made in Malaysia, and then the components that make the display, they Bosch, they're in Germany, and then, you know, the electrics are made in England. That's so not true. But anyways, if they did, they'd never start. But the point is that we live in a global world in terms of supply. Our products are built all over the place in very complex, growingly complex world. Mother Nature, I don't know if you watched the news this morning, but apparently some mega storm is going to hit the Midwest. 22 inches of snow is forecast in the middle part of the country towards the end of the week. We seem to live in a world where continuously the biggest storm ever, or the biggest drought ever, or the biggest wildfire ever is happening. We've got population. Did you know that there's 1 billion people in Africa that have cell phones? 1 billion people. And that's growing massively, a lot more than America. And then, of course, you've got Moore's Law, this technology change. The fact is that technology is changing at a massive rate. Now, Mick put this slide up, and I took this diagram from his book, which was inspired by this Khalida Perez, this economist, awesome economist, to talk about this change of ages, the world that we're in. And often the pain that you're going through, the challenges that you see in the organizations that you're working in, the environment that you're dealing with, even the social environment that you're dealing with, is because we're going from an age of mass production to this digital or different age, this age of software. And all the things that held true in mass production, specialization of labor, all of this kind of stuff, is fundamentally changing. Now, previously, on every single one of these sort of like intersection points, we had a huge world war or something, and loads of people died, and it allowed us to reshape the future. Hopefully we won't have the same thing happen, but it's an incredibly challenging time that we live in. I mean, just look at some of these differences. In the age of oil and mass production, long-term investment planning, short-term investment planning. Short-term profit, long-term value. That's kind of confusing. Efficiency, because it's all about how many people have been on a meeting to debate spending $500 when you actually calculate the cost of the meeting, it's like $2,000 or $10,000. How many people spend it like, oh no, you can't do that, that's 500 bucks. And just that, and you're wasting more time to do it. We live in this world where efficiency and budgets and who owns it is almost more important than actually the value that we're getting out. But we're having to move to a different thing. Specialization of labor. I'm a front-end software engineer. I think that's always amusing. I'm a back-end software engineer, which sounds a bit rude. And based on the way I wrote code, it was very back-end. But you've got these specialized, and then you get these managers who coordinate like a game of chess, and they move all these resources around, and they optimize their flow through this PERT chart, and using the PMBOK as the body of knowledge. And that's not the world that we live in. Self-organization and decentralization is, we've got these sort of like non-hierarchical structures, these very flat organizations. We have the rise of the creator. Management is no longer king. In fact, they have to just serve the creator. It's really interesting. Thomas Friedman also wrote a book called That Used to Be Us. It's a really interesting and depressing book about the state of America. And it's also inspirational at the end. It sort of like talks about why we're going to be okay. But what's interesting is he talks about 3 types of jobs. He talks about creators, people that help creators, and servers. Servers are going away. There's a story I told last night at dinner about McDonald's. I occasionally, when my wife doesn't know, I take my children to McDonald's because there's a Tesla charging station next door, which is brilliant. So you just go in, put your Tesla on the charge, and you go into McD's. But now I don't talk to people in McDonald's because I found it to be a fruitless activity. And instead, what I do is I log on to their little app and I get the Happy Meal. I select the apples because I'm quite healthy. I select some, some fries for me because I don't know who invented them, but they're totally addictive. They're like crack. And then an iced coffee, and I can pick the Happy Meal toy, which is great. So that means you don't get the toy that nobody wants, which is normally what you got with the Happy Meal. And so, and I don't have to talk to anybody. I go in there, it's there, I pick it up, I sit down. I have a 2.5-year-old and a 5-year-old who are now causing chaos, but now suddenly you can just throw them into one of these booths so they can't escape, and then there you go. No human beings talk to. Probably a robot making the food. I don't know. Probably a 3D printer printing it or something. I have no idea. But ultimately, it's certainly a lot more efficient and easy, and I get a lot of value out of it. It's funny. So it just reminded me today, so I tried to take a cab. I took a cab here instead of using Uber or Lyft because I thought, I'm going to spread the wealth. That's important. I'm going to spend $7 on a cab. It was the most annoying experience I have ever had. This gentleman was from Ethiopia. His English was not fabulous, and I said I wanted to go here. He said, I don't know where that is. I then had to get my phone out. I showed him where it was. He goes, oh, hang on. Oh, yes, Pennsylvania Avenue. There's a big building. I said, yes, it's the White House. We had a little conversation about that. I was like, my God, it took me like 10 minutes to get here just to confuse. I'm like, no. Imagine if that was a self-driving car. I wouldn't have had any of that trouble. We live in a world of creators, people creating these things, and people that help creators. So we need to navigate this thing. Opportunity is everywhere. I built a website, well, not me personally, that would be very dangerous, but I've got the team building a website that's 9 million people. It runs as fast in India as it does in England, as it does in London, as it does in the US, as it does in Boston. It cost me $1,800 a month. 9 million people. It's incredible what we can do today. We live in the world of opportunity. You know, all these different technologies can be applied. All these different opportunities exist for us. We've got this magic product box, right? This amazing product box where we can change the business model. I'm going to sell this. I'm going to do this. We can change the channel. We're going to use this distribution model. We're going to, use Facebook. We're going to partner and do this and use an app or whatever. We've got different architectures, whether it's serverless or containers, or we can do some really cool thing with some kind of modern new thing that I don't even know about. We've got a different experience. We can try a different thing. We can do customers. We can do features. But of course, is it desirable? Is it feasible? Is it viable? And have we got the cultural propensity to do it? So we're continuously playing all these little things, which makes everything complicated, because everything isn't an opportunity. We prove that every time we release software, every time we release a feature, we learn something more. We live in this learning world. So these are two frameworks. Actually, Ralph Stacey doesn't like us talking about his framework like that, apparently, so we shouldn't really talk about that. But Cynefin, which is a Welsh thing, so I apologize for that. But we have this, as an Englishman, whenever I say Welsh, I have to make a joke, sorry. But we have this model here. So we live in this complex world here. Probe, sense, respond. It means that we can't work in the way we've been working. It means we fundamentally have to work in a different way. Now, that's the rub. Our organizations are built around mass production. They're built around efficiency. They're built around planning. Yes, we have some innovation, but that's a chaotic, messy thing in the corner. We then take those things and we put them into a defined process. We optimize that flow. We make sure that all of our components, we mitigate variability and risk. We get rid of those things as quickly and as fast as possible. We have a whole class of people called managers whose sole job is to get rid of complexity in the line and cost in the line. And now you're telling me that we have maximum variability, we have large amounts of unknown. That means we have to work in a different way. We have to build empirical organizations, which is really hard. And yes, this is the kind of life cycle that actually exists. You're basically continuously sensing, inspecting, and adapting against your customers and users. You're doing it in support of somebody that gives you some money to do it, call them stakeholders. And it's all about teams, all about teams. And yes, Scrum is the ultimate planning life cycle for that. And that's all Scrum is. That's all it is. And actually, Scrum's based on 3 very simple premises: empiricism, self-organization, and continuous improvement. That's all it is. Now, we wrap that with discipline, with values, with a focus on the customer and this sort of learning thing. But ultimately, this planning cycle is at the heart of Scrum and the heart of this new world. So it's really, really hard. 10 minutes? I've only just started. OK. Forecasts are hard, right? But so now, we know that Scrum works. We know it's being used by millions of people throughout the world. But it isn't perfect. Interestingly, DevOps came in response to Scrum. Scrum's biggest biggest community is Benelux, particularly the Netherlands. I think if you build a country below sea level, you get really good at empiricism. And you don't take reality. You're like, oh my God, are we drowning? Hang on, is that water? So they're very into Scrum, and they realized quite quickly that they couldn't deliver fast enough. So these gentlemen formed something called something around agile infrastructure. That was what the first DevOps days came from, interestingly. So they started solving these problems. So a bit of DevOps, and then lean startup and design thinking. This is a Gartner model, which I actually really don't like. But ultimately, what it's emphasizing is the fact that we have to think about things differently. We have to think about the customer. We have to try and explore different business models. That's really what lean startup is all about. And then we have to use this sort of like continuous exploration or learning kind of model, which Scrum defines, using backlogs and sprints and small batch sizes and transparency and visibility. But unfortunately, the reality is this is what we live at. Now, I coined a term when I was an analyst at Forrester, water, scrum, fall, to describe the behavior of most organizations in their adoption of Scrum. They were doing Scrum. Yeah, of course we're doing Scrum. We're cool. We have dailies. We wear jeans. They had all the, we're cool, right? But we only plan once a year. Oh my God, we can't do planning. I mean, you have to actually talk to people. It's an awful experience. People talk about budgets. There's project managers. They come out of this little room. It's awful. And yeah, we don't release software often. Our customers don't want it. Hey, if you want to hear about the conflict that we have in today, you need to listen to an analyst call with Elon Musk and Tesla. So the analyst calls go something like this. And I have to share this because I think it's so funny, and I know we haven't got much time. The analyst call's got this. Hello, I'm William Wilbur Smith from Morgan Chase. Elon, I love your car, awesome. When are you going to get the software right? You keep sending me updates. That's literally what an analyst said to Elon on a call. If you just get it right, then you won't have to keep sending all these updates, right, Elon? And Elon was like, hang on a minute, that's just ridiculous. Same conversation with SpaceX when somebody interviewed him about the Falcon Heavy rocket, and they said, oh, how likely is it to go up? What, are you worried? He goes, it's about 50-50. And you could see the reporter was really nervous because the rocket was not that far away from her, and she thought it was going to blow up and kill her. And she said, are you? And he goes, yeah, but it'll be fine. 50-50 is pretty good, eh? It's a spaceship. They blow up. And so afterwards, it was a massive success, and she interviewed him again, and he said, she goes, oh, you must be really excited. He goes, yeah, I'm happy, but I think we would have learned more if it had blown up. What? You crazy. And an umpa went by, and it was all fine. So we live in this world that we have to work like this. We have to move from a world of factories. We need to stop thinking about our businesses and our knowledge work and our product delivery as this magic factory, and think about it as some more organic. McKinsey talks about it a lot in terms of this organic organization, because we respond to an environment, we continuously inspect, we get feedback, et cetera, et cetera. All right. So that sort of sets the scene. We're having a hard time. We need to do something different. We need to work in a more empirical way. We need to get better feedback. We need to be continuously learning. We need to basically throw out the ideas of mass production and Taylorism and Fordism and replace it with something based on empiricism, based on self-organization, based on continuous improvement. And we need to do that at scale. So what is the grand new theory? I don't really know. But what I do know, Dunbar's law, or Dunbar's magic number, applies. What we see over and over again is that anything bigger than sort of like 150, 200, it becomes a huge nightmare, a mess. 34 software engineers in the core software team for SpaceX. 34. And most insurance companies can't build an insurance claim system with less than 10,000. You're like, well, hang on a minute, rockets, insurance? Oh, wow, that's different, isn't it? Dependencies, we need to remove them. You're going to hear a lot about the use of things like transparency and the flow framework that makes them visible so you can get rid of them. Frequent integration. We know that we have to come together frequently and observe something. So trunk-based development, frequent integration, continuous delivery, whatever you want to call it, not just in terms of the technology, but in terms of the business, bringing it all together, delivering value frequently. Making the right decisions is really hard, but we have to focus on leadership, and we know that waste creeps in. We have to balance the needs of the team, the needs of the product, the needs of the organization, the needs of the stakeholders at any one moment. Compromise is necessary, but it isn't mandatory. 5 minutes, yeah. We need to become organic and team-centric. Most people say that we care about teams. Yeah, we care about so much, we put people on hundreds of them. We care about teams. Yeah, we spend $50 a year on helping people get better as a team. Yeah, we care about teams. We distribute them across the world and never let them communicate. But we care about them. We need to build organizations that are very team-centric. And the challenge is we need to be continuously watching for empiricism to break as we scale. Have we got the right feedback loops? One of the great things that the work that Tostop's doing is they're really making those feedback loops very, very visible and very, very transparent. That's ultimately what we see. Empiricism at scale, some of the things that I do to make it easier is to reduce complexity. These guys wore the same clothes every day. Not because they're nerdy, not very stylish people, though that might be the real reason, but because it reduced complexity. Choice is overrated in certain places. Cadence, the reason why we have Scrum regular cadence is we don't have to spend 4 hours trying to work out when everybody's available to do a planning meeting. It happens on the 3rd or 2nd Monday of every week, every month, right? We know that. That's just when it happens. It's easy. Transparency, making things transparency. People ask me what a Scrum Master does. One of the most important things a Scrum Master does is raise transparency. Make sure that everybody sees stuff. You've got to do it, and you know what's the other great thing? The reason why Amazon are so good is because they're so cheap. They have kept teams small because they're too tight to pay any more people to join the team. They've invented technology to automate the busy stuff because they haven't got anybody to help them. They invented their own infrastructure because they couldn't buy it from they couldn't afford to buy it from IBM. Economy is everything. Trust. The Google stuff, Project Aristotle. What we found, psychological safety is the most important characteristic of a high-performance team. And then alignment. This product idea is so important. Align to products, align to customers, align to outcomes. So that positions us for a grand unifying theory. Just as that, everybody leaves. I see that. This is it. It's as simple as that. Modern outcome-based value metrics. Now, maybe the flow metrics and the stuff at the top of that framework is a start. I think there might be some other stuff, but we'll argue about the details. Customer-centric, product-oriented value streams, plus, I used some square brackets to make it look like math, empirical, self-organizing professional teams that are continuously improving. That's all it is. That's really what it is at the heart of it. And then that gives us a way to provide transparency. What we find with the flow framework, so I reviewed Mick's book. He did the usual Mick thing. He sent it to me and said, I need it tomorrow. Can you provide a review? Actually, he said, I needed it yesterday. Can you provide a review? I'm like, yeah. So I was lucky enough to be on a very long flight. So I spent a significant amount of time looking at it. And it is a really interesting book. It's not only well written, and it tells a really interesting story. It provides lots of good anecdotes along the way to support the story. It actually has a really good idea. And I've seen a few good ideas. Some that turned out not to be so good, like RUP, but generally I've seen a few good ideas. And what's interesting about it, what I was struck as, it provides that sort of, that fabric that connects all of these different teams doing empirical work and provides a mechanism to raise transparency across the value stream. It also encourages to align in a certain way. It also allows us to think about a structure, Lahrmann's law, that really supports the way we're going to do business, which is really, really interesting. Oh, I don't know what happened there. I just copied this out of Mick's thing. That's cool, isn't it? Anyway, that's why testing sometimes is valuable, but boring, so I never do it. So what does it all mean? All right, so this is my summary. So Jeff, relax. I'm almost over. It's like old times where Mick eats into your time. So what does it all mean? We live in a complex world, and it's only getting more complex. I'm sorry, we do. Our kids may live to 150 with the technology that's being developed. A friend of mine works for a company that's doing gene splicing that allows you to, basically curing genetic blindness, curing genetic hemophilia. That's incredible. We live in a world that's always changing. So Imagine if people are living normally to 150 and we used to retire at 60. What the heck are we going to do with all these people? We live in a complex world that's ever changing. Our children may never drive on the highway. I don't drive on the highway now. I get into the car, I drive to the highway, I switch on autopilot, and then basically just daydream and watch everybody else doing the craziest things. Like, because I now have the benefit of just sitting there, I see people like, there was a guy the other day that was on his laptop and had his, like, whilst driving with his knees. Like, and you wonder why 38,000 people die on the roads. I'm like, wow. We live in a world of ever-changing environments. Today's organizations aren't built for that. Our institutions, our governments, they're not built for it. They're built for a mass production, Taylorism, Fordism world. That is the world that they're built for. So it's going to be hard for you, I'm not going to lie. We need to become digital first, software first organizations. That's the thing that's so interesting. These ideas like Scrum, DevOps, Design Thinking, Lean Startup, and others are great tools that we can use. But ultimately, it's about empiricism, and scaling empiricism is incredibly difficult. I think that the way you do that is with this sort of outcome-based metrics. Start with the outcome. Empiricism requires that, right? Start building these value streams around customers and products. Build to support them. Create some teams. I don't think you can do more than 10. But you may disprove me there, or 12 teams at the maximum. Allow them to be self-organizing. Allow them to be continually improving. Allow them to be using empiricism on a regular basis. Lead them in that direction. And then connect them with something like the Flow framework. Bring it all together to raise that transparency, to allow the organization to make the right value judgment. I think that is the future. I really do. We've got a long way to go to know how to do it, and we have a lot of institutional inertia to break down to make it happen, but it's exciting times. This is me and my boy George dressed in our Leicester City tops. Leicester City proved me and many people wrong by winning the English Premier League. I believe that you can, with the right teams and the right focus on skills and the right environment, you can do amazing things. That's what I wanted to talk to you. Today's going to be a really interesting day. Lots more information on top of this sort of entertaining kickoff, I hope. If you've got any questions or comments, tweet me, email me, send me a carrier pigeon. I don't know, whatever you want to do. I think we're on a grand adventure, and I'm really excited to be here and share that with you. Thanks for your time and your attention.